Two top ministers of the Narendra Modi's cabinet, that is Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and India's Trade Minister Piyush Goyal, have been on a 3-day visit across America and Europe in order to strengthen their bilateral ties. It started with the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman meeting officials of World Bank and IMF, and it is now India's Trade Minister who's been on a 3-day visit across Europe, that is France and Italy, in order to conduct his bilateral conversations and diplomatic ties, to strengthen the diplomatic ties with France and Italy. I'm Karishma, Asoodani, special correspondent with Business Today Television, and I'm here in Rome, Italy, live to get you all the information on the kind of investment decisions and conversations that are being taken with the foreign counterparts in Italy and France. Well, the Commerce Minister's first stop was Paris in France, where he met the Indian diaspora and also held key meetings with French diplomats. He also held a CEO roundtable where more than 50 CEOs from France and India participated. He also had an Indian delegation travel with him to discuss on the key sectors that hold importance in strengthening this India-France relationship. India-France Business Summit was a 2-day event that was held in Paris and included some key conversations on the sectors that must be in focus. Well, I got a chance to speak to him and discuss with him what are India's plans and how is going to be the road ahead in its relationship with France. We are joining with the man of the moment, Union Minister of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Piyush Goyal. Sir, we are here at the India-France Business Summit, followed by which you also have another key bilateral meeting happening in Rome, Italy. How do you see this collaboration panning out as an opportunity for India?
Well, I think very clearly European countries are recognizing that India is right. The last decade has been one where we have reformed in significant measure. And as Prime Minister Modi says, we have reformed but with conviction, not out of compulsion. And this reform has now started to show in terms of the interest that companies and countries have in India. They recognize that today, India with a young population, with high aspirations, probably provides the biggest market opportunity that is available anywhere in the world. They recognize that a country where the basic needs of everybody have been well taken care of is a country where there will be demand for so many new goods and services which present a big opportunity. At the same time, with India's high managerial talent, skilled manpower, affordable costs, and scale of operation that we can offer, India becomes a very competitive manufacturing or service provider. In that sense, people are looking up to India to invest greater degree of capital. They are looking to set up bases in India, both for design, for innovation, for manufacturing on the one end, and for provision of services to their international operations. So each one of the companies, and I've had so many bilaterals through the length of the day. I've had a business summit, which in the course of the day, we had very good attendance. Nearly 300-400 companies attended and engaged with Indian companies and have expressed interest in expanding business and trade with India. We've had a CEO roundtable with about 40 top companies. All of this gives me the confidence that France certainly is a country to watch out for in terms of our ability to scale up. I'm confident about Italy also, given the level of interest that has been shown to the impending visit to Rome.
Right. So due to the current geopolitical situation, there has been some kind of fear, I'd say, on the global demand, especially if you see the FDI has been also on a decline. Do you see this as a challenge persistently?
Well, I think all over the world, there's been a softening of investments and trade. Fortunately, given the huge strengths that India had, we've been able to maintain the momentum in trade for the last 2 years. We've seen our exports grow from about $500 billion to nearly $765 billion in a short span of 2 years. with growth being secular both in goods and in services. We hope to continue on this track in the months and years to come. On FDI, we certainly saw a huge amount of foreign direct investment growth in the startup ecosystem in the last 2 years, prior to the years that's gone by. Last year, because of the overheated condition and valuations in some sectors, we did see some softening of FDI, but I think it's a temporary phenomena. India presents such a compulsive investment opportunity that I am quite confident growth will come back.
Great. So besides the fact that we are a growing economy, of course, do you think post-COVID, a lot of countries wary of China and the way things have panned out has found a golden opportunity with their collaboration in India?
The sense I got in all the engagements was India's democracy, the rule of law, our transparent government and transparent working systems are a very, very attractive case for European countries. They have also recognized that putting all their eggs in one basket did not work and has caused them pain. In this situation, they are looking for India as a major destination both for investment and for provision of goods and services to their companies. They're also excited about the huge manpower pool of talent that we have. They are excited about the changes that have happened under Prime Minister Modi's leadership in the last decade, where India is on a path of massive reform and transformation. And reform for India today is not out of compulsion. It's a conviction that the leadership holds, that we have to engage more with the rest of the world. We have to integrate with the global economies. We've done 2 FTAs last year. We continue to work with other countries to bring more equitable and fair FTAs on the table. My sense is that Europe is certainly looking to India to be a major partner both for investment and trade.
Right. One last question, because you did mention of FTA. Is the India-UK FTA on track?
We don't comment on speculation. I don't know where such speculation has come out from.
That means it is on the timeline.
Well, everything, to the best of my knowledge, everything is on track, and such speculation is probably making good headlines for some media, but it doesn't change the equations that we have between governments. We have been engaged in several other areas of discussion which are handled by other wings of the government, and we are very strong in our expectations from other governments, particularly when it comes to the sovereignty and integrity and safety of India and Indian nationals. But trade and trade talks are working on another track. But at the same time, we would expect credible outcomes on the desire that we have for respect for India's sovereignty and India's political engagement with other countries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goyal, and congratulations for all these efforts that you have put into. I also spoke to the French Minister Member for Foreign Trade, Mr. Olivier Becht, who also shared about the plan of action and what will be the next step in order to escalate this cooperation and investment opportunity between France and India. We're right in Paris, France for the India-France Business Summit, and I'm joined by Minister Olivier Becht, Minister Delegate for Foreign Trade, Economic Attractiveness and French Nationals Abroad. Bonsoir.
Hello.
You'd rather say namaste.
Yeah.
Comment ça va?
Très bien, merci.
Merci beaucoup. First things first, how has the whole experience been like with the Business Summit and the interactions with the Indian counterparts?
Well, I think it was a great moment for the Indian-France relationship The business summit was really a success. It's a good opportunity for French companies and Indian companies to meet and to make projects together. I think we face the same challenges today, especially with the digital transition and also the climate transition. We need an energy transition. So I think that we have good opportunities with French firms to go to India and with Indian firms to go to France and collaborate to have this future and make it better together.
Right. One quick question. What is the plan of action now?
The plan of actions is cooperation between French companies and Indian companies. We will organize some delegation from French companies to go to India and prospect to the Indian markets. And it was here a good occasion for more than 300 Indian companies to go to the European market and say, okay, France is a good opportunity, but it's also a gateway to go to Europe and to go to Africa.
Great. One last question. How do you see India as an investment destination on a global scale?
Well, I think that India is a very huge market, but it's also a good friend of France, and it's very important in the Indo-Pacific region to have good friends as India, and it's a good opportunity also for French companies to go to a market with 1.4 billion consumers, and I think that it's also a good idea for the French companies to explore this market and to be today and tomorrow in India.
Thank you very much, Minister. We wish you luck in this process that you've taken and both the countries for the collaboration ahead.
Thanks a lot.
Well, one of the biggest Indian corporates present with me in Paris was the ITC chairman, Mr. Sanjeev Puri. He did talk about why India is going to be a golden opportunity for members of the French corporation to participate, and also he shared of the key investment opportunities that India and France collaboration could give to the world economy. We are joined by Mr. Sanjeev Puri, Chairman ITC, and also, of course, important key member representing the CII here. Sir, first things first, congratulations to you. A majority move that's taken by the commerce industry, along with, of course, the Ministry of Commerce in leading this. How do you see this panning out in the coming days?
I think the presence of a galaxy of business leaders on either side is testimony to the potential and the interest that this visit has generated. I think that the understanding of the opportunities in India, the fact that India is transforming, I think all that through the visit has certainly been strengthened and enhanced. And there is, of course, recognition that there is opportunity to build on the strong relationship that India and France have got, which is, that's really come by the impetus that the government has provided, and it's a relationship that is built on a very strong foundation of trust, because it's also related to some critical sectors like defense and cybersecurity, amongst others. So there is certainly now greater opportunity for business to business, increased collaboration across multiple sectors like the green economy, startup, the investments in manufacturing, given the PLI schemes, given the lower corporate income tax, in infrastructure, given the investment on Gati Shakti.
Right.
So there are tremendous opportunity. We can work together on food and nutrition security, a global problem, like the opportunity to work on healthcare, really to collaborate and make the world and make our countries better and solve some of the issues that are facing the world. In fact, even in the context of the new geopolitical dynamic, I think this relationship holds immense potential.
Great. You did talk about the key sectors that are in focus. Today's meeting, which included close to about 50 to 70 CEOs, has been quite an effort. What is the plan of action? What happens after this? This has been the first milestone where you're discussing. Where does it go from here? And does this also kind of support and stands as a background to the India-EU FTA that we've been kind of looking forward to?
Well, this has been an excellent forum to exchange ideas and views and share perspectives for businesses to understand opportunities. And given that there is already an inclination, a positive sentiment, good relationships, I think this is going to encourage businesses to explore and strengthen the relationship. So it will certainly provide some impetus to growing economic cooperation.
So one last question. You did talk about the geopolitical situation. I'm going to ask you on that. Just a while back, in fact, a World Economic Report has been released, which has yet again slashed India's economic growth rate from 6.4 to now 5.9. First one seen that goes below 6, despite the fact that RBI is actually pegging it to be better than what it had already estimated close to budget. How do you see India's growth in the coming years, keeping in mind that the international and geopolitical situation still remains tentative with the fears of recession countering it?
So the estimates of there are various estimates that have been provided as far as the potential of, or the estimated growth in the coming year is there. And most of them are hovering around the middle of 6. That is what our belief is also. I think the Indian economy per se is on a strong wicket. Our macros are good. I think the empowerment through the public digital infrastructure, the investments on public works, the policy reforms that are happening, that is certainly putting the economy structurally on a very strong trajectory. There is no doubt about that. The risks that emanate from India are all external. But so far, I think the government has done very well in managing the risks through a prudent monetary and fiscal policy. The RBI interventions or the government's intervention on either sides have been very prudent, and it has been steered quite well. But that is really the only risk that we face. Barring that, I think the economy is on a good track. We cannot remain isolated from the rest of the world. Right. But I think on our own, we are on a good track, and there are opportunities opening up because of the strength of India and the geopolitical dynamic. In fact, today also in the event, also the whole idea of alternate new supply chains developing on India was brought forth by businessmen from, business leaders from France. So that's a great opportunity. But I think over time, we should see this gathering momentum.
Great. Thank you so much for talking to us, Mr. Puri. Well, it wasn't just the Indian delegation that was happy about participating and exploring this opportunity, but in fact, CEOs of major French companies were also a part of this business summit who explored the importance of having this deep trade collaboration with India, and we got a chance to talk to them, one of them being BlaBlaCars and Airbus, which have a significant presence in India and are looking to further expand their plans. Right from Paris, France, we are at the India-France Business Summit, and joining me is Nicolas from BlaBlaCar. Thank you for speaking with us. First things first, bonjour. First things first, how do you see this opportunity of India-France collaboration in terms of your business in India?
Well, I think it's great just to meet lots of business leaders, and also like the unique access you have to the government. I was very surprised how easy it was to describe our activity, to ask some very candid questions to the minister on how to, for example, in our case, how to better regulate carpooling, or in fact, how to define a proper regulation for carpooling, which today is non-existent.
But I hope you understand that with the automotive sector also booming in the country, especially in India, they're now looking at electric vehicle as the road towards greener automobile industry. So will BlaBlaCar be able to comply by those rules?
Yeah, I mean, in our case, we don't, we're not a player, I would say, in electrifying or not electrifying the cars. So if you think of the car, I think it's going to go through like 3 changes. One is going electric, which is the one you mentioned. One is probably becoming increasingly autonomous. So we talk about self-driving. And the third one, which we play in, is about sharing the car, right? So at some point, I think we'll all recognize in cities and even outside of cities, it does not make sense to drive an empty car with 3 empty seats. Right? It's a waste of energy, it's a waste of money, it's a waste even of social interaction. So where we play is essentially sharing the car. Other players are playing in electrification or the technology in the car.
You've had a important meeting today, just to get into understanding the information that has been shared, and of course a bit into details. What is the kind of investment that you're targeting in India, and do you have a plan of action, and which cities would you like to look at?
So for us, we look nationwide, right? Because we are a service that connects people intercity. So we tend to launch the service nationwide. And right now, like given like the boom of activity that we've seen, we more than doubled between 21 and 22. We're going to double again, it seems, between 22 and 23. And today we do very modest investment in India. So it's time for us to accelerate. We're having like a bigger team on the ground, doing marketing investments also, just for people to know it exists, because many people have not even heard of BlaBlaCar in India. So it's still very, very small in that sense, even though, as I said, we have 4 million people actually using it in 2022, and it's probably going to grow to 7 or 8 million this year in 23.
That's great. 8 million in 2023. One last question in terms of your expansion plans that you've been talking to accelerate your presence in India. Have you kind of listed the regions that you're going to target? Delhi is the national capital. We have the financial capital, Mumbai.
Not yet, no. As I said, we tend to go nationwide, and then what we see, I mean, we very much people-powered as a service, right? Because we connect essentially car owners with passengers, and the beauty of it is people end up matching in different regions in India, and we observe that, and when we see a region pick up, for example, West Delhi, we have lots of activity, for example, between Mumbai and Pune, we have lots of activity, then we zoom in, and we start investing even more, because we realize that there is probably a hole in the network, and carpooling has a role to play. And then we engage also with local governments, essentially to see like how they can get involved, and how they can essentially help us grow and help us get more people on the platform.
I'm joined by Stefa Vassul from Airbus. Thank you for joining us. Quite a date has been with the France-India Business Summit in Paris. How do you see this collaboration going forward, especially as an opportunity for Airbus?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think it was indeed a very dense day. I think when we see that all the opportunities for collaborations that we are exploring, being either on the supplier side or being in the production side or being on the engineering side, is quite limitless in many respects, and especially in the space domain where I'm coming from.
Okay. Now, you're talking about the space domain, and India now is emerging as a destination that's also very much focused on the technology and the AI aspect of it. How do you see that as a part of your investment strategy in the country?
So first of all, we are seeing a great move by the government of India to open up that part of the business. I mean, we have seen that the regulatory framework has quite changed. The creation of a new operator for the space business with NCL, the great focus which has been put with ISRO on the participation of the private industry. I would say these are all the very strong foundation on which we want to build to keep growing our business there in India, and mainly very strong collaborations.
Great. India and France, of course, are seeing this collaboration to go on for the coming few months. What is the plan of action for Airbus after this? How do you take forward your investment strategy in the country?
I would say these are all work in progress. So I think that we've got quite some engagements. I'm not going to be able to go into any sort of details with regards to any sort of time scale and so on. But what we are seeing, and I liked very much how Minister Goyal described and the Indian market. It's about speed, size, and skill. I think that very much reflects our approach to it and our commitment to keep it growing.
Thank you very much for speaking with us on Business Today, and we wish you and, of course, your counterparts a great opportunity in India. Thank you. Well, these top level talks and dialogue between India and France have also been welcomed by the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and Industry. They're expecting, in fact, a positive response and the plan of action in terms of the free trade agreement that India is currently negotiating with the European Union. I'm in conversation with Mr. Sumit Anand, who's the president of Indo-France Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us. Quite a weather out there, and of course, the air that is getting inside talking about key important meetings going on between India and France. How do you see this panning out?
Thanks, Karishma. No, I think it's great that we're having this summit. I think the Indian government and the Indian embassy has done a fabulous job. It's great to see Minister Goyal here with a great delegation from CII. It's the Indo-French Chamber. We have been seeing this emergence of India as an important market for investment by French companies for a few years. We've seen some of the large French groups which earlier used to probably not have big business in India, now have India as either their top 5 priority markets, or India is already amongst the top 5 countries in the world. And you can take numerous examples of that. And I think this summit will only accelerate that. We need to share some of these success stories. We need to share how we can partner together as companies and as countries. And I think the summit is doing a great job for that.
Right. There are key French companies that are also here participating along with the Indian India Inc. that is here to hold key important discussions. What are the sectors you think are under priority?
See, the sectors are typically, I would say, where there is a strength in the French corporate sector and where India has a demand, right? Now, traditionally, India has been a consumer story. So we would have seen the traditional French companies like a L'Oréal or Danone, invest in India. But as in the last 9 years, there's been a strong focus on urban development, energy, infrastructure. A lot of the large French companies, and obviously aerospace and defense, a lot of the large French companies, which are world leaders in that space, are investing heavily in India in each of those domains, right? So you can pick examples from aerospace, you can pick examples from waste management, examples from technology with Capgemini, for example. So it's quite diverse now. And that's the strength of the French economy. It's quite a diverse economy. And now that India is growing to the next stage of its growth, I think there's opportunities for companies across various sectors.
Right. It's been the era of India to also hold key bilateral meetings when it comes to the trade pact and the free trade agreements that it's been doing. One that is, of course, in the offing with the European Union. How do you see that coming along?
The challenge of an India-EU free trade agreement, and I'm not the biggest expert on this, is that India is a federal country and Europe is also a federal framework, right? And it therefore would take time to engage and to get there. I'm always been one who's hopeful, and I believe that will really accelerate trade, especially between both these countries and parts of the world. The important thing is the governments are committed and the rounds of negotiation are going on. And let's hope that they can find a meeting ground that is win-win for two geographies of the world which really need to work much more closely together than they have in the past.
Right. One last question. You're representing the industry body, and key conversations when we talk about in the global economy scale do revolve around what incentives do the investors get. Can something be expected on taxation or any other such kind of incentives that the CEOs have been seeking, something that has been as a want for a really long time?
I think the Indian government has done a great job these last years in essentially, at the state level, the governments are competing to attract large projects. So I think there's a lot more opportunity for companies to get the best deal, if I can, to set up in India. I think at the central government level with PLI, again, it's a great initiative, right? I think what companies often look for is the ability to operate business easily in a country, right? And this make India less complex and complicated as been perceived in the past. And therefore, all the efforts that, the government can make in that direction would, I think, be the most important. So when we talk about ease of doing business, it's largely been centered around some cities, right? If we could have, and I know we have a national metric of that, and that's pushed further, I think that will make the companies feel even more welcome. I really don't think incentives is really an issue anymore, with both state and federal incentives now available in India.
Right. And on the global scale, how far are we away from the big R, that is recession? Because key developments coming around also what has happened recently with the banking structure in US, or also you talk partly about Europe.
Not a direct impact yet, but definitely expected in the long run. You see, the World Bank has also downsized the growth of Indian economy, and so has IMF predicted that it could grow at a lesser percentage scale than what it was expected.
No, I think we clearly are in an era globally where which is not a high growth era, and I think we knew that with the events coming out of COVID, and especially last year with the war in Europe. And that's one has to live with that. I think in that the silver lining is that India represents a growth opportunity just because of all the factors that have always favored India's growth, right? And I don't need to go into them from demography, and we've added new factors like digital. So I think for India, it's relative to others, it's an opportunity. And therefore, I think the word recession is not relevant for India. And I think even globally, people are a little less scared of a recession now than maybe they were a year ago. I think things are beginning to settle. But, who knows? We live in a very volatile world.
Thank you for speaking with us on Business Today Television.
Well, the second leg of the journey was in fact very hectic because we traveled with the India's trade minister to Italy, which witnessed key meetings with the Italian counterparts. 2 days of mega meetings and mega negotiations that were held with Italian CEOs. He was also joined by Italian Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani, who shared of the future prospects. Mr. Goyal also held a gala dinner with the Indian embassy counterparts in Italy, along with the Italian and Indian CEOs who shared of their business plans and also discussed on the free trade agreement that is going to help solve the trade talks and make trade more comfortable and compliance free between both the countries. We are live from Rome, Italy, and joining me is India's Trade Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, here at the India-Italy Business Summit, which has been a forward to also the India-France Business Summit that you recently had. First things first, sir, how has the conversation and the dialogue been like today with the CEOs and with the counterparts in Italy?
Well, this has been a very short 24-hour visit, but extremely fruitful and outcome-oriented. I've had 2 meetings with the Deputy Prime Minister in charge of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Mr. Tajani. I am going to be meeting the other Deputy Prime Minister shortly. I've just concluded a very extensive meeting with Mr. Urso, the Minister of Enterprises and Made in Italy, a very senior political leader, and along with him, his Deputy Minister, Mr. Valentino. In yesterday's interaction with the business community, we had 2 deputy ministers. So effectively, in 24 hours, I've had the opportunity to meet with 2 deputy prime ministers, a senior minister, and 3 deputy ministers. It's, in my 9-year career in government, I think it's one of the most aggressive series of interactions we've had with a very large economy like Italy. We've had one-on-one interaction with several business leaders, CEOs and owners of large companies. We've had a CEO roundtable this afternoon. We've had lunch with the CEOs this afternoon. We've had a engagement yesterday where I got to meet a larger pool of business persons from Italy, and some have even flown in from neighboring countries like Sweden. So all in all, it reflects the growing interest in India. It shows that Prime Minister Narendra Modi's outreach to the world and the relationships he has created across the world are now bearing fruit. It shows the growing relevance of India in the new world order, where India provides huge opportunities for businesses, given the large population, the young population, the aspirational India, and the way India is developing as the fastest growing large economy. All of this is reflected in my visit both to France and now to Italy.
So 2 large economies in the EU that you've just spoken about, and the dialogue will of course continue to a further fruitful discussion. What key sectors are we looking at in this collaboration? How will this benefit India?
We discussed several areas of mutual cooperation in Italy. For example, defense and space were at the center of our discussions today. Tourism is an area that we see great potential between both countries. Investments in the steel sector and infrastructure sector are being invited both by India and by Italy. It's a two-way interest. Food processing is an area where both countries have a lot to offer. There's significant taste in India for Italian food and vice versa. All in all, whether it's automobiles, auto component manufacturing, whether it's the interest in the telecom space, I think the interest and the potential is huge. We need to continue this engagement between the two sides to be able to really capture the opportunities as they come. They have committed their full support to the India-EU FTA, which they see as a very big messaging to the business communities to expand trade and investment with India.
You did mention about the India-EU FTA. With this parallelly, we've also been in dialogue with other countries. We are talking about UK, Canada, and also you do have certain key other significant meetings lined up in the week. If you'd like to comment on that.
Well, we are at an advanced stage of dialogue with UK, with Canada, apart from the EU. On the 26th of this month, 4 ministers from the EFTA countries are coming to India to discuss the potential EFTA-India engagement and free trade agreement. We are waiting for the GCC countries to appoint a new negotiator since the last Secretary General has demitted office. And we'll hopefully finalize and start discussing with the GCC countries. There is a huge interest across the world because everybody can see that India's opportunity in our Amrit Kal, the next 25 years, growing from a $3.5 trillion to a $35 trillion economy is unparalleled in the history of the world. And everybody would like to be a part of that growth story.
So one last question. I know you are in a hurry, but one last question to end with. And this is, amidst this geopolitical situation, are we confident of the fact that the FDIs and these kind of dialogues that you're doing will be promising and will come in the right timeline?
These things are never decided on timelines. Deadlines do not determine successful negotiations. But the spirit and sincerity is there for all to see. The commitment to speed up and do it in good amount, in a fast pace of time is absolutely undisputed. Everybody is working towards a fair, equitable and balanced engagement, whether it's a free trade agreement, whether it's the IPR laws, whether it's recognition of each other's GIs, whether it's an investment agreement. Various areas which are being negotiated will all have to recognize the sensitivities of each other, the group of 27 nations here, India on the other side, or with UK and Canada and other countries, recognizing each other's different levels of development, but with a shared vision to care for our people, the people of all the countries with whom we are working. I'm sure we can come up with outcomes which will be good for India and good for our partners.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goyal. As we say, man on mission.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, the Indian and Italian delegation managed to, in fact, achieve some concrete proposals and concrete discussions in terms of the investment opportunities. We had a chat with the various Italian CEOs who were present. One of them, of course, being Piaggio, who has a major presence in the automobile industry in India. Here's an excerpt. We are in Rome, Italy for the India-Italy Business Summit, where a pool of course, Italian and Indian CEOs have been participating to look for an opportunity in India. And I'm joined by a man who needs no introduction for the kind of presence he has in the Indian market in the automobile sector. I'm joined by the Executive Deputy Chairman of Piaggio, Mr. Matteo Colaninno. Thank you very much for joining us on this conversation. First things first, how do you see this opportunity of India-Italy collaborating? You've had a vast presence in India and for a really long time. What is the expansion that you see with this opportunity?
Thanks for this opportunity. Piaggio has been in India for 14 years, and is a fantastic country, beautiful country, and also one of the biggest area of the world for our business, for the two-wheelers and the three-wheelers. So today I had a conversation with Minister Piyush Goyal, and we have said that Piaggio will invest for next future in India, in mobility, in e-mobility for three and two-wheelers with our brands. And so we are very happy to say also today that India is strategic for us.
Good to know now. And also the electric vehicle policy that the government is so keen on. How's Piaggio collaborating on that note? You do have two and three wheelers, if I'm not wrong, working around in that area.
But we have a lot of technical center, engineer center worldwide world. And so Piaggio is ready. We had also vehicles already on the market, so we are ready for this transaction, and we have to follow what is happening, and we have to anticipate the trends.
What is your expansion plans in terms of the product pipeline in India? Are there any new launches expected in the coming months?
It's too early to say time. We are ready. We have already product. Today is a day where we met the government. We met Shri Piyush Goyal, and to say that India is important for the future of Piaggio. We are ready and we are on time.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us on this conversation, and we wish you luck on this opportunity ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joining me is a very special guest. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Naira Energy, Dr. Alo Virag. Thank you very much for joining us on India Today Television. A long journey from Mumbai to here in Rome. Tell me, what are your expectations from this dialogue, and how do you see this India-Italy collaboration going forward for Naira?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me, and it's a great pleasure and honor to be invited into such an esteemed meeting organized by the embassy and hosted by the Honorable Minister. So it's really a great honor to be here. Well, what do we expect? I don't know how much this is known, but our co-investor, one of our co-investors is Filippo Ghirelli, and he is Italian. So 24%, approximately 24% of our company are owned by an Italian. And as you know, Naira owns the second largest single-site refinery in India. So we have 20 million tons of processing capacity. And this new investor is very much invested into renewable energy business. So he has a big portfolio, and there's a huge potential and also a huge aspiration in India to grow, especially also in the renewable energy sector, but also in petrochemicals. And of course, this is why I'm here, and this is why I think I can make a lot of interesting business connections today.
Yeah. Right time, in fact, to make investments when the oil prices are kind of shooting, if you see also at the global crude. Do you see things stabilizing for the sector soon?
That's a very difficult question, because oil prices are a very political price. So it's not like supply and demand only. There's a lot of political influence, and you have seen that there was a production cut by OPEC Plus members just recently. So OPEC Plus tries to be the central bank for oil prices on a global scale. So they try to adapt their production scheme to supply and demand in order to stabilize the crude prices and the availability of crude. And by that, they are functioning like a central bank for the oil price. And this is their aspiration. I guess they do a good job by that.
Right. At a time when the geopolitical situation is quite intense, you also see that India has put a windfall tax, which you're well aware of. Of course, that keeps getting reviewed every fortnight. Do you see a major impact of windfall taxes on the prices?
Yes, of course, there is an impact on windfall taxes on the prices, but generally we have the policy not to comment on political decisions by central governments, so I will not comment on it.
Okay, thank you very much for speaking with us, and I wish you a great luck on this collaboration that you're looking to further deepen.
Well, two of the most historic, beautiful cities in the world, Rome and Paris. As they say, it's the architecture and the love that keeps you swaying in the beauty of this city. Well, I traveled with the India's Trade Minister for 4 days, and the conversations here have been quite on a scale of fulfillment. Most key, important, significant discussions that were made around were the free trade agreement that is to be done with the European Union and United Kingdom. In fact, Minister Goyal clarified that both these FTAs are on track and will be taken up and fulfilled as and when the negotiations proceed. He also shared that he'll be looking to hold a conversation on April 26 with the 4 ECFA members in New Delhi in order to discuss a further trade negotiations and cooperation with them. It looks like the man on mission, Mr. Piyush Goyal, is quite on his job, on his task to get India these free trade agreements and to upscale the Indian economy. I'm reporting from Rome, Italy, Karishma, Asoodani, and well, I have handled this camera by myself.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.